Welcome to Blueprint Boost for Contractors, the podcast that's your go-to source for unlocking the secrets to successful marketing, gaining valuable insights, and growing your contracting business with less stress. Your host is David Brooks, and he's thrilled to be your guide on this journey. As a seasoned expert in the contracting industry, David understands the challenges you face. That's why each episode is crafted to provide you with actionable strategies and proven blueprints to boost your business to new heights.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, David Brooks. And for this episode, we do have a guest with us, and I'll allow him to introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm Dan Thrasher. I'm the CEO at Thrasher Foundation Repair, and excited to be here.
All right, Dan, excellent to have you.
Yeah,
So,
I'm always up for talking contracting and everything around it.
Mhm. We're looking forward to doing a little deep dive here today and talking about your journey and experiences. And I guess we can start off. You've been connected in the contracting world since you were, a child. What was it like, growing up with the business literally in your family?
Yeah, I mean I didn't know any different. My parents had a business. My dad, was a blue collar worker out in the field, solving problems. My mom was in the house, she was answering the phones, bookkeeping, all that sort of stuff. And so I just grew up watching what does hard work look like? What does it look like to just find ways to solve problems, to just put one foot in front of the other every day to find the next opportunity. And it was a real grind, for my parents. And so I got to watch that, and it was literally right there in my house, all the way through into my senior year in high school. They finally moved the business out of our house, and I started working with my dad when I was 14, and then did that all the way through high school and college, and eventually came back full time after a few years of experience. So I really got to experience the business as a kid, and then as an employee, and then eventually as a leader in the company. So it's been a fun journey.
Nice, nice. So you've been along this path, throughout your career, and from your childhood and going into adulthood. But what are some early lessons about entrepreneurship and leadership that really stuck with you?
Well, I think I had a pretty small view of the world when I was just working as a teenager, like it was just one job at a time, and I didn't really have a very big view of what was possible. Um, After I came back, in my 20s full time to work for the business, I went to a conference, and the speaker talked about how what we think about as what's possible is something that we have to invent. There's no way of knowing what's actually possible. We just have to, in our minds, say like that's the limit. We have to invent a limit because we don't know what it is. And as I listened to him talk about it and kind of prove himself out, it helped me recognize that, like, you know, I need to push myself every day, and I need to open up my mind to what's possible. I need to open up my mind to, like, how many people out there might need the services I have to offer. What are the different ways that we can go about serving that customer? How do we make our employees better? How do we teach them, train them, help them to grow within the organization? And so I think that really became kind of a real focus for me, starting in my 20s and all the way through, for 20 years now. I really feel like my job every day is to figure out what else can we do,
Mhm.
what else is possible, how do we keep trying to find new and better ways to do things.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. And a part, of that journey under leadership and really taking things to the next level, the company rapidly grew, right? You started off with 40 or so employees, and now you're all the way up to over 300. What was the turning point for that rapid growth?
Well, some of it was, not too much at one time, just
Mhm.
consistent growth, I think adds up over time, right? So I think nowadays, most people think they gotta grow in a year or in, 6 months. And I think that's probably not the best way to look at it. I think smaller growth, but consistent growth over many years can become really extraordinary. And so, for us, we strive to grow about 15% per year. Really, we try really hard not to have it be more or less, because if we grow too much more, then things start to break. We start to not be able to train people well enough. Things fall through the cracks. If we don't grow enough, there's not enough opportunities for employees to grow. There's not enough, momentum. So we try really hard to stay kind of within, around 15%, give or take just a little bit. But if you think about it, 15% growth, if you compound that over 5 years, you double the size of your company every 5 years.
Mhm.
That's actually extraordinary growth. But when you break it down to 15% per year, it doesn't sound like that crazy of a number, right?
Yeah.
So I think for us, it's mostly been trying to stick to that kind of consistent growth every year so that we can do it well, and so that it's sustainable. But yeah, so that's what we've done. And now I'm in 20 years, like I'm the old man now, right? Like I never thought I was going to be the old guy that had been doing it for 20 years, but the reality is it ends up going fast. And if you're having fun, along the way, it goes even faster. So I think just really identifying what is the right growth rate for me and how do I rally my team around that we're going to, on the easy years when everything's going our way, we got to have enough restraint not to grow too much.
Mhm.
And then in a year that it's really difficult and maybe there's some headwinds, maybe the economy isn't very good, or maybe there's something going on that's making it more difficult, how are we going to grit it out and find a way to get that growth even if it's hard? And so that I think is really what I would recommend committing to when it comes to growth.
Yeah, I love that breakdown. I love that philosophy and, trying to hit that number spot on and not trying to go under and not trying to go above. And some people may think like, here's our number, but if we go above, that's good.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and above a little bit's okay, right? But you just don't want to, you got to be careful and know your bounds.
hmm
For
Yeah,
sure.
no, I agree. I agree. Now, with that growth and expansion into multiple states, how do you keep the company culture intact?
I think that's been one of the hardest challenges to figure out. And I think a lot of that has been learned through kind of just trial and error. But when I first started and there was 35, 40 employees, I could know everybody personally.
Mhm.
I could know every job. I could know what was going on with it. And then as we grew, you can still kind of sustain knowing everybody till you get to about 100, maybe even 150,
Mhm.
but that's about it, right? And so what I realized is I had to learn how to be a different kind of leader, and I had to figure out how to make sure that all of our managers were super intentional to make sure they were hiring the right kind of people, that they were training the right kind of people, that they were maintaining the culture. And so one of the things we had to do was we had to really define it. So for a lot of years, it was just you just kind of knew it. It was the ethos. It was just who we were. Um, but at some point we said, you know what, we can't just rely on that anymore. And so we got into a room with a group of us, a small group of us that have been around a long time. And we said, all right, let's write this stuff down. What is our purpose? What's our mission? What are our values? And we wrote a little book. We call it our manifesto. And we use that to train new employees. We use it to make sure that when somebody's thinking about coming to work here, they read through that. If that inspires them, they'll probably fit in here. If
Mhm.
it doesn't make them a bad person. It just probably means they wouldn't fit in here very well.
Mhm.
And so that kind of became the thing that we used to get our managers and everybody on board with like, hey, these are the standards that we want. And let's just attract the kind of people that want that too. It'll be a lot easier to manage than to try and change people that aren't like that.
Mhm.
So that was a big focus. And we eventually had to embrace this idea that the people in your department or close to you, they're like your immediate family. They're the people that you really know and you really can help and have an impact on. But the rest of the people in the company that maybe you aren't as close to, they're more like your extended family.
Mhm.
You still care about them, you still love them, you still know of them, but you don't get to talk to them every day. You just see them at the family reunion once a year, or at a training once in a while. But you still care about them, and you still know they're part of you. And but you trust that their local, close, immediate family is taking care of them and is going to let you know if they need anything. And so we really had to embrace that and understand that we could have an overarching culture, but then there's also going to be some kind of subcultures under that at each location, at each department, that kind of thing.
Uh, I really like that breakdown and thinking about it like that, and really being able to uh you said to create that manifesto, right? I love that you went down, you got together in the room and you were able to really hash that out. And I think sometimes, with so many moving parts in the business and so many different things going on, it could be easy to lose track of things and not to be able to have a full grasp on it, and it can really hurt you down the line as you're looking for other opportunities for expansion or growth, or even for selling if you don't have those things in place.
Yeah, and I think it gives you that framework for when to say no to an opportunity because it doesn't fit us.
Mhm.
I think when you have emergencies, like I would say COVID would be an example. It's been 5 years ago now,
Mhm.
but we all had to make some tough choices when that happened because we weren't sure, are we going to be open? Are we not going to be open? Are we going to be able to, stay in business?
Mhm.
And when those types of things happen, being able to say like, all right, who do we say we are? And how are we going to prove to everyone that we really are who we say we are? Because it's really one thing to say we care about people. It's one thing to say, we're trying to do this or we're trying to do that. But then when things get tough, do you still stick to that? And so we took that serious when, in that season, that it was like, all right, we say we care about people. What does it look like to care about people when you're going through crisis? And having the words written down and having proclaimed them really made us feel accountable to it, which was really helpful.
I love that. It's people and having a good experience, and really being able to provide that value goes into like my next segue, which is customer experience. How do you make sure that the team across the board is delivering that unparalleled experience when they're going out each day?
Well, first you have to decide that you want that. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of contractors that don't decide that, right? So the bar has been set pretty low when it comes to home improvement contractors, right? Most homeowners will tell you they've had a bad contractor experience.
Mhm.
So we have to admit that to our team when we first are training new people and say, hey, the bar's pretty low. That doesn't mean it's okay to just barely get over the bar. We're trying to set a new bar.
Mhm.
We want to set a new bar so that when homeowners hire a contractor, they expect more. And we think that actually elevates the industry as a whole. And so it really starts with how do we set the tone when we hire? How do we set the tone in training? We do all hands quarterly meetings. Every time we reiterate what it is we're trying to do. And for us, we say our purpose is to redefine the industry. So we're trying to redefine what it means to be a home service contractor. And one of the ways we do that is by creating remarkable experiences for customers, for homeowners. And so in order to do that, we have to talk about it. We have to make sure that everybody understands that's the aim. But that one of the ways we do that though is by having really clearly defined core processes so that everybody knows what their part is so that they can execute it really well. So for like someone that's going out to work in the home, they know that, before they leave, they have to call the customer to let them know they're on the way. That's just part of the process. So, you have to be consistent with it. We have certain things that we let the customer know ahead of time so that they're prepared for us. We want to make sure that our trucks are clean and organized. We actually installed a car wash at our shop so that they can keep that billboard that's going down the road clean. And so that when we pull up, we look like professionals. Our uniform, they know exactly what they're supposed to wear because when we show up to that customer's house, we want to look the part, right? I'm just barely scratching the surface there, but really making sure they understand like, okay, we do these things consistently because we know that's what actually delivers that experience for the customer. And then as long as we're hiring the right people that are nice, that care, and they are able to learn that process, they can deliver consistently over time.
Yeah, I really love how went into that explanation and breakdown. And like you said, the bar, is low, but that doesn't mean that you have to barely get by. And but if you can go above and beyond and set that new standard, that'd be great. When talking with a few contractors, just the little things go a long way with the, customers, and they notice the difference between, let's just say Joe and Tim, with, their experiences, and it could be really beneficial for, your business, right? Your growth, people say good things, referrals, and just having that good name in the community.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think we want to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, but the side benefit is referrals,
Mm.
online reviews, all that sort of stuff. So that is an end result that you get, but I think you want to start with like, let's do it because that's what we said we were going to do. Let's do it because it's more fun to do things well than it is to do things poorly,
Yep. Hmm.
right? So why wouldn't we want to do it well? Let's just be excellent at everything we do because it's more fun. Well, the result then will be a better business, more referrals, growth, which gives everybody in the business an opportunity to grow with it.
Hmm. Yeah, like you said, you get the benefits from doing the right thing, which is, fantastic, for the business. When we look at that segment and the other piece into it, how do you go about getting positive reviews from customers?
Well, it starts with doing work that deserves a positive review, right?
Yep.
So really focusing on onboarding new people, consistently training existing employees, celebrating wins, celebrating good performance, right? If a customer calls in and says something positive about their experience, everyone on the team knows that they need to post that on our Teams channel. We use Microsoft Teams to communicate with everyone, and so there's constantly people celebrating other people's success on that, which just breeds more excitement and makes more people want to deliver that level of experience. And then if a customer's really happy, just actually asking them, hey, would you be willing to give me a 5-star review? Like that's one of the biggest compliments you can give me because that means that people out there are going to know I did a really good job. And people when they appreciate the work you did, they want to find a way to kind of help you out. So I think sometimes contractors forget that they just need to ask their customers like, hey, this would really help me. Would you? It sounds like you're really happy. Would you be willing to go out there and give me a review and help me out? So that's probably the simplest answer.
Yeah. No, I love that. Like, doing that good work, and, the customer is feeling really good. Get them while they're feeling really good about, the work, and, being appreciative, because that's going to go a long way. It's going to speak volumes.
And I think we have to remember that for the homeowner or the customer, the person that delivers the value is the person that comes and does the work.
Correct.
So that's who they are going to have the most appreciation for at the end. The person that came and broke a sweat helping them,
Yep.
they're much more likely to want to help them than they are the salesperson or the person back at the office that they've never met in person. So I think actually getting the that frontline employee that's doing the work to actually engage with the customer in that way is really helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, I really you appreciate it, and just being a homeowner myself, right? Appreciate I might call a company and they send somebody out, but as who we interact with here is like, hey, we're really appreciative because this is the
Yeah.
person that we're seeing, when they first come in as a representation for the company, and it's the last person we'll see as they're going to leave.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. That's the person they're going to remember the most, and they're going to decide whether it was a good experience or not based mostly on that interaction.
Mhm. Yeah, that's correct. So now you're a business owner, you're a coach, you're a family man. How do you balance those priorities?
Well, I mean, I like working,
Mhm.
so I still put in, my time, but I would say by surrounding myself with a really good team,
Mhm.
and the kind of team that we all care about the same things, we're willing to kind of have the debate as necessary to figure out the next steps, but we also cover for each other a lot.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people talk about work-life balance. We tend to talk about work-life integration.
Mhm.
They're not separate. I don't get to be, a dad, a husband, a baseball coach, a business owner, a manager. I don't get to do those all independently and they have no crossover. It's just
Mhm.
not the way life works, especially with technology and your phone.
Mhm.
You have your email, you've got your, all your messaging and stuff. Like you don't really ever get to turn anything off. It's all on all the time.
Mhm.
So we just really kind of try to commit ourselves to like, hey, we're all going to work hard and we're going to get our work done, but if I have something going on with my kids and I have to leave early, or I have to come in late, or I have to, go out over lunch or whatever, I'm going to go take care of that. On the other hand, there's probably going to be a time when I'm not at work that I'm going to have to take care of a work thing.
Mhm.
And that's okay too. Like we kind of give each other a lot of grace, but we also cover for each other if we need to. So having really good team health, a group that really cares about not just the business, but about each other, makes it a lot easier to kind of have that flexibility when you need it.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that breakdown. Everybody does things differently, and it's a juggling act, right? You're wearing a lot of hats, but it's good to be able to be, integrated and to be able to function in each one and have it be productive and move forward and being able to provide value for each aspect of your life.
Yeah. And I mean, I still am able to like primarily focus on something, right? I
Mhm.
just don't want to ever be like, oh, at 5 o'clock comes, I'm shutting everything else
Yep.
off, and now I'm just dad mode.
Yep.
And on the other hand, I occasionally, it's the other way around too. But yeah, like when I'm at home, I'm mostly focused on my family. When I'm at work, I'm mostly focused on work. But there's some flexibility there because I trust the people around me.
Mhm. No, that's good. And throughout your journey and leadership and what are uh let's just say break it if you can break it down into one of the best pieces of advice or that you've gotten.
Man, there's so much. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, and I think probably like to start with, I would say just always be learning,
Hmm.
right? Because there's so much good stuff out there, but like we can get into a rut of just kind of like working and not growing.
Hmm.
But I find that like when I'm reading, when I'm listening to good podcasts, when while I'm driving, I'm listening to an audiobook a lot of the time. I think it makes my brain think differently. It opens my mind up to things that I maybe wouldn't have thought of otherwise. I just feel smarter when I'm learning. Even if what I'm learning isn't always super directly able to be applied to my day, I
Hmm.
feel like my mind works better. Um, and then you do pick up nuggets that you can implement. And so I think making sure that you translate what you learn theoretically into an actual action. What can you actually do with that information? So like earlier I mentioned, 15% growth. That, for instance, was a concept from Jim Collins. He calls it the 20-mile march.
Hmm.
So his book, Great by Choice, was one of those that I read a long time ago that I've reread a few times because there's so many good nuggets in there. But the idea of a 20-mile march is something that I worked with my team to say, okay, this is the concept. The theory is you should have a kind of a growth plan
Hmm.
that you make sure you stick to. What's ours? And we worked on it and we brainstormed it. We said, okay, this is what we think is the right one for us. And it ended up being 15% organic growth every year. That that's an example of a concept that I think was really good and really helpful that we figured out how to apply in reality. And so I think there's a lot of good concepts out there. You got to figure out which ones really matter and then figure out how do I actually implement it in my own business. How do I actually make this actionable and there be a difference because of it? So that would just be, one example, but like there's a ton of them like that.
Hmm. Yeah, so many, like you said, so many different examples, but and so many nuggets that you could take along the way. But I love how talked about, reading those books and listening to those podcasts, but, seeing the value in those things and getting advice and information, but seeing how you can implement it is super important because it's not one size fits all. It's, maybe, it's 10 different things, action items, and you might hone in on three or four that really work well for your business. And, being able to kind of take the time out to implement that, to actually follow through is a huge thing because I think people we could fall into the trap of listening and knowing what we need to do to move forward or to implement a side of the business, and then we just hit like that roadblock or we get too busy and it just sits there collecting dust.
Yeah, I think you got to combine execution with new ideas. And
Yep.
sometimes we are good at one or the other, but not both.
Yep.
Right? Like, oh, I've got new ideas, but I don't have time to execute. I don't have time to implement. On the other hand, some of us just execute all the time, and we're really good at execution, but we're not executing the best version because
Mhm.
we're not learning. We're not exposing ourselves to new ideas.
Mhm.
Finding a way to do both is hard, but where the real secret sauce lies.
Mhm. Yep. No, I agree. Like, you get it's hard to be a master in both.
Another key learning for me has been understanding how much team health really is a serious competitive advantage. And that, is really a Patrick Lencioni kind of concept, Five Dysfunctions of a Team. Another one of those books that's just like a mainstay in my library. I have to read it every few years. We share it with a lot of our managers. But the idea that like by having a team that's really healthy and has a lot of trust,
Mhm.
you actually talk about the hard things, you make each other better, you just gain traction, you get further because you're not hiding
Mhm.
behind things. There's not this kind of um, we don't really say everything because we're not all comfortable with each other. Like that really slows an organization down, and you
Mhm.
end up talking about the same things over and over again, or you avoid things and then you don't ever make progress. And so really surrounding yourself with people and being willing to build the health of the team by talking about things, by developing your relationships with each other. That to me, that's one of the most important things you can work on.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. Like having that good team atmosphere, being able to collaborate, but being able to be honest, right? And truthful and not just circling the same topics over and over again, same subjects. And I've been in those rooms where, you get together and you have a crunch session and talk about things and you're like, this is just going to be what we're going to talk about for the next for the next
Yeah,
quarter. We're actually not going to, actually implement what we said, and those real conversations still need to be had.
I think the most common symptom of poor team health is when you have to have a meeting after the meeting.
Yes.
Like you all talk about something, the meeting ends, you walk out, and one person comes to you and says, "Hey, we need to talk about that some more." And it's like, well, why didn't you just bring it up with everybody else?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't, okay. Well, in other words, we don't have good enough trust in that room for you to just bring your concern to the table. That's not good. We've got to figure out how to now get you to bring it up with everybody
Mhm.
and talk it through. Like it might be that you have a really good point, or we might not agree with you. Either way, we all got to get on the same page.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. That's true. It's a long time ago, having a conversation with a friend, and he's just basically was talking about the organization, and he's like, look, we have our pre-meeting before the actual meeting, and then we go
Mhm.
to the meeting, and then we have another after meeting about the meeting. And
Yeah.
it's so much, and he said we waste so much time, with these nuances and these roadblocks, and we don't move things forward.
Well, yeah. And even in our regular day to day, you'll have someone come to you and say, "Hey, I don't think so and so did a good enough job on that," or, that person didn't follow through like they were supposed to. And I always want to say, like, "Oh, okay, have you talked to them about it? Like, why are you talking to me about it? Talk
Yeah.
to them about it."
Yep.
Right? I'm not saying that I can't help. I'm not saying I can't mediate if I need to, if it's a bigger deal. But most of the time, it's like, well, how about you just start with letting them know you're disappointed they didn't follow through?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll admit that they messed up and they're sorry, and they'll make it up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they'll have a different reason. But at the end of the day, you got to have the kind of relationship where you can talk to each other about the problems.
Mm-hmm.
And again, sometimes I'm like, I'll sit in on the conversation,
Yep.
but you're going to talk to each other because me being the in between doesn't do
So,
either of you any good.
yep.
So I don't want you to triangulate with me. I want to help you talk to each other.
Yeah, that's bro. It's you just mentioning that like just hit the nail on on the head. Like how many times I can replay in my mind how I've seen that, which is like, did you actually talk to him? Did you let him know? And
Mhm.
like, or you get to, you have certain management, and it's like you get to a review, and you're like, oh, XYZ, and it's like. And the person's just shocked, like, I didn't know, like, you didn't tell
Yeah.
me, we didn't have this conversation. You know, waiting to the last minute at the most crucial point to just drop the bomb on me, and I haven't had any chance to actually change said behavior or learn patterns.
Yeah. And I actually think you can apply this to when you're dealing with customer issues as well.
Mhm.
Sometimes maybe you have an employee that makes a mistake, or they just disappoint a customer for whatever reason. You hear about that. You hear about it from the customer.
Mhm.
My natural tendency is that I'm going to go fix it.
Mhm.
I'm going to take care of this customer. What I've learned is better is to say, hey, I'm going to bring that person that screwed up with me, and
Mhm.
we're going to come fix it together
Mhm.
so that they know how to do it better next time.
Yep.
If I just make the problems go away,
Mhm.
the person that's making the problem in the first place never learns how to prevent the problem. The best education for them is to actually go back and help solve the problem they created.
Mhm.
And so we have to make sure that we take the time to actually walk alongside them in that rather than just solve it ourselves.
Mhm. No, my dad was a firm believer in that of, hey, I'm going to show you, like you're going to come with me and we'll teach you how to do it right so you know next time. If I just keep correcting the mistake and not teaching you, you don't have the ability to get better to know how to do it yourself when you're faced with this situation again.
Yep, exactly.
Mhm. Well, Dan, it's been, great talking. One last question for you.
All right.
What are your goals for the remainder of the year?
So this year, we are actually on a trajectory to hit. We set a goal in 2018 to serve our 200,000th customer in our history during our 50th anniversary year. And so our biggest goal is to hit that goal, which we should do in about October, maybe November, depending on kind of just how things go. So we're really excited about that. We're kind of doing a whole 50-year celebration all year this year. We're giving back to the community in a few big ways, getting our employees, rallied around that, and then really going to celebrate that, hitting that big milestone that we set, a long time ago. And it felt back then like, wow, that's a big goal. I don't know if we can do that. And so to actually have it happen and have it happen within the time frame that we set, that's going to be super exciting. So really looking forward to that. And otherwise, just continuing to try and find ways to redefine our industry for our customers and for our employees and for really the entire contracting industry.
Excellent. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you guys accomplish those goals.
Awesome.
All right. Well, Dan, it's been wonderful. Thanks so much for joining the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Everyone, thanks for listening to this episode. Make sure you tune into the next one. Until next time.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Blueprint Boost for Contractors. We hope you found today's insights and strategies valuable for your contracting business. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and please leave us a review. Your feedback helps us bring content that truly matters.